The most wonderful time of the year. Although, let's be honest, around the holidays, things really add up. But here's the good news. Only at Verizon, you can get a single line for $50 per month when you switch and bring your phone. So while ice skating for two is definitely costing more, here at Verizon, you can save. Gifts for your third cousins? Steep. A single line with Verizon? Not so steep. A real tree? Pricey. A single line with Verizon? Less pricey. Flights to see Meemaw and Pops? Those are up. A $50 per month single line? That's down. Even a trip to the Atlanta Holiday Market will cost you more. But with Verizon, you can switch and bring your phone for just $50 per month for a single line on unlimited welcome, with autopay plus taxes and fees. All this to say, during the holiday season, when everything is costing more, you can get more for less right now at a local Verizon store. $15 monthly promo credits applied over 36 months with a new line on unlimited welcome. In times of congestion, unlimited 5G, 4G LTE may be temporarily slower than other traffic. Domestic data roaming at 2G speeds. Additional terms apply.
My name is Cameron Jones. I'm a martial artist. My dream is to compete in the Olympics. My uncle needed a kidney transplant. So for him to have that second chance at life, it means a lot. I hope my organs will achieve greatness. I want them to have such an optimistic and positive outlook on life. That's just something that I want my organs to be able to do.
When you become an organ and tissue donor, your story continues. Lifelink. Register today at mystorycontinues.com.
It's the SNL Hall of Fame podcast with your host, Jamie Dove, Chief Librarian Thomas Senna, and featuring Matt Ardill. And now, curator of the hall, Jamie Dove.
All right. Thank you so much, Doug DeNance. It is great to be back here at home in the SNL Hall of Fame for the SNL Hall of Fame podcast. Here we are, rounding out episode 5 already. We're a quarter of the way through season 4, if you can believe it. We've got a great one this week, but before, you with the dirty feet over there, wipe them. You know what I'm saying? Just wipe them. Don't make me yell. The SNL Hall of Fame podcast is a weekly affair where each episode we take a deep dive into the career of a former cast member, host, musical guest, or writer and add them to the ballot for your consideration. Once the nominees have been announced, we turn to you, the listener, to vote for the most deserving and help determine who will be enshrined for perpetuity in the hall. That's how we play the game here, folks. It's really quite easy. We nominate them, you come on and talk about them, and then you get to vote for them. And we will pick the 4th class of the SNL Hall of Fame. This week, we are joined by a returning Deremy Dove, who joined us last year for the first time. And we really enjoyed the conversation we had with Deremy. So we invited him back, and he will be talking about writer Adam McKay. So that's real exciting. And I'm looking forward to hearing Deremy's take on Adam McKay in a conversation with Thomas. But before we get to that, like we do every week, we've got to walk down the hall here. And you see where those two walls meet perpendicular? That's a corner. And my friend standing over there, that's Matt. And for about 60 seconds, he's going to give us some minutiae in that corner. Because, ladies and gentlemen, that is Matt's Minutia Minute Corner. So let's get to him. Matt.
Hello.
How's it going?
Great. I'm going great. And you doing great yourself?
You know it. I'm here.
Awesome.
You know, when
Excellent.
I'm here in the hall, I'm at my best.
Always a great time. Always a great time.
Talk to us about Adam McKay.
Adam is another tall guy, like Will. He is 6'5", born April 17th, 1968. He was born in Philadelphia. He has a lot of credits, 95 producer credits, 42 writer credits, 27 director credits, and 15 acting credits. Wow. So a lot. He is a Second City alumnus. He performed with Scott who you probably know from 30 Rock. But he also wrote on a lot of crazy stuff, like Mary Shelley's Frankenhole and Moral Oral, both wild cartoons. So he's had so Adam has had some amazing collaborators. They were in the sketch Gump, which is included in the all-time best sketches of Second City. That comes with the Second City book, which I have. Adam also studied under Del Close at the ImprovOlympics and was a founding member of the UCB. He is
did not know that.
Yeah. So he is one of that early group that helped broaden the improv options for us. Now he's married to Shira Piven, an equally talented theater and film director, producer, actress, who is the sister to Jeremy Piven.
Oh.
Yeah. So they have a daughter named Pearl, who is the landlord in the landlord sketch that helped Funny or Die blow up. And she's also the baby in Good Cop, Baby Cop, which, if you haven't seen them, are two of the funniest sketches ever on Funny or Die. Like, they came out of the gate strong.
They sure did.
He co-founded Gary Sanchez Productions with Will Ferrell. When developing the other guys, he originally thought to call the movie the B Team, a riff on the A Team, which is being filmed at the time. The producers of the A Team didn't threaten to sue, but did gently say, if you call it the B Team, we can't promise we're not going to sue you. So that was a nice way of doing it.
Right.
Now, when doing for the press for the film, he explained the TLC references from Michael Keaton were all improvised. Those were moments that Burton just brought to the film. That Keaton, let me redo that.
Yeah.
When doing press for the film, he explained the TLC references were improvised by Michael Keaton, which were in the moment, which are some of the best moments of the film, which is why he is my true Batman, and will always be.
Did you watch The Flash?
Yes, and I enjoyed it. I loved Keaton in that. I enjoyed it. It wasn't great, but Keaton made it. I mean, like I if it wasn't Keaton, I probably wouldn't have enjoyed it as much, to be honest. Now during the filming of Talladega Nights, they basically took over the entire town of Charlotte, and Adam converted a closed down businesses and churches into sets. Now he and Will worked very closely together for a very long time. Unfortunately, their working relationship broke up after some hurt feelings during the casting of an LA Lakers documentary directed by Adam, who to this day regrets that choice and has apologized for changing the casting and dropping Will from the movie. He holds a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in front of the Hollywood Wax Museum, and is most recently doing some very serious stuff, including Vice, The Big Short, and I not being a Succession watcher, did not realize this. Succession is an Adam McKay production.
Wow.
And that is as far a diversion from like Step Brothers as you could possibly get. But it is about family dynamics, so there is a thread. There is a thread.
I think we should head downstairs and take a listen to what Matt and Deremy have to say. Don't you think?
Yes, Jamie and Matt, thank you so much. I'm so excited for this episode of the SNL Hall of Fame. And today's nominee is someone who is probably a lot more famous for his non-SNL stuff, even though he did great work on SNL. But a lot of people currently know him for being a high-profile director in Hollywood. He made the transition from SNL writer to director. So I'm so excited today to be talking about one Adam McKay. Adam McKay is going to be our topic today here on the SNL Hall of Fame. And we have a great person joining me to talk about Adam McKay. And Deremy, you pick the interesting nominees, man. Like Dick Ebersol last season and now Adam McKay.
Yeah, Thomas, always a pleasure. Love visiting the hall with you, getting down to some SNL history. But I like to get into those people because I feel like true SNL fandom recognizes the great cast members. Of course, they're the ones we see every week, every Saturday night. But there's so many important people behind the scenes that help make Saturday Night Live this great institution. And I love showing them some love. I'm an offensive lineman kind of guy. So I love like those guys who are important but don't get that big credit. I want to give them love. So nice. I love finding those different kind of nominees for us to discuss.
Yes. So we got into the trenches, so to speak, last season with Dick Ebersol and today with Adam McKay. And of course, the official introduction, Deremy Dove, co-host of the Bigger Than the Game podcast with his cohort, Jose Ruiz. I was lucky enough to appear on 2 episodes of Bigger Than the Game back in June. We talked some NBA draft. We went nuts with NBA draft talk, Deremy. So that was a lot of fun. Most recently, Deremy and Jose have covered, they did a 2-parter on Bo Jackson, which I found really interesting. Of course, first part being baseball, second part being football. Jose and Deremy have a lot to say on sports and just everything in general, man. You guys do such a great job.
No, thank you, Thomas. And it was so much fun. Pleasure was all ours having you on our show and breaking down the NBA draft and different years. And we can't wait to have you back on. So it was just, I feel like I owe you, a great appearance on here now because you did such a great job on our podcast.
Yeah, we'll just keep doing these home and homes because it seems to be working out really well. So thank you so much, Deremy. So today we are discussing, again, Adam McKay. And as I mentioned, a lot of people know Adam McKay now as a director, but his roots, Deremy, a lot of people don't know, are actually in sketch comedy.
Right. So Adam McKay was going to Temple University, my alma mater, and then that he had 1 semester left, which I give people credit when you're that close and you say, I'm going for my dream. Like, hey, that's gutsy. And he winds up moving to Chicago, and he was one of the founders of UCB. And that's such a huge name and huge group when it comes to improv and sketch comedy. And Amy Poehler was a part of that, Matt Walsh, Horatio Sands. So many people who we know now in the comedy world came out of UCB, which Adam was a co-creator of. And also going on to Second City and being a part of that cast. So he definitely had that sketch and improv training, before he wound up going to 30 Rock.
Yeah, it seemed like he was hyper focused, as you mentioned, like 1 semester away at Temple, and he's like, I'm pursuing my dream. That was around 93 that he, along with like Amy Poehler and those others, co-founded UCB, the Upright Citizens Brigade. Flash forward, after UCB also did some performing at the ImprovOlympics in Chicago, so he really had strong roots there in the sketch and improv community. But SNL, so we go back to 1995. SNL's transitioning from season 20, a notorious season 20, as a lot of us SNL fans know. So they needed a few breaths of fresh air. They needed some new blood. So Deremy, does McKay's impact on SNL possibly resonate even more because he became a writer in such an important year?
Oh, absolutely. For me, it kind of reminds me a little bit of your Paul Appel episode that you did last season, where, if people who either, if you remember, if you were around, or if you're younger and don't know, or whatever the case may be, this was a crucial time in SNL's history. And a lot of people, and including Lorne Michaels himself, says this was the most difficult time he had as executive producer, where he's getting outside pressure from the Saturday Night is Dead, all those critiques that they've heard throughout the history. But even in-house, a lot of NBC executives were really coming down Lorne's throat and making him having this battle of wills and talking about forcing out certain writers, certain cast members like a Farley, Sandler, different people had to go. So Lorne has even said, recently that was the most difficult time. So bringing in like a Paula Pell, but a Adam McKay, and that, a lot of those cast members was really crucial in saving Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, we had talked about in our Dick Ebersol episode how there are a few people and a few moments in SNL history where like the show needed saving. Mm-hmm. And I think this transition from season 20 to season 21, the show was genuinely in trouble. I mean, it was genuinely close, I think, to getting canceled. And as much as I love Farley and Sandler and those guys, there was just a lot of uncontrolled bro kind of energy in that last season. It was very sloppy. Man, it was very like just a weird vibe in that season 20.
It's one of those weird things because as like someone, and I'm sure you're the same way, who's fans of like artists and the creatives, you don't want like the quote unquote suits getting involved and stepping in. But if I'm honest, looking back, I understand why I think they took it too far, but I understand why they were saying, hey, we have some issues here with what's going on with Saturday Night Live, because like you said, love Farley, love Sandler, had great moments. But at that point, I felt like it was bro comedy, but kind of on autopilot as well. And I felt like a shift was needed and a change was needed to kind of, for me, when I look at Saturday Night Live and we're at those moments where it's like, what's going on, Saturday Night Live or Saturday Night Dead and all those jokes, I feel like SNL, it can evolve, but ultimately it has to get back to its roots of what makes this show great. And I feel like it gets lost, and when it comes back, it's really Lorne and the writers and the cast kind of being like, this is what comedy, like sketch comedy is, and we're going to stick to that.
Yeah, exactly. And they pretty much totally cleaned house. I mean, they retained Molly Shannon, who was a late addition in season 20. They retained Tim Meadows, Norm Macdonald, but they really brought in like just a lot of new faces. Will Ferrell, Anna Gasteyer, Sherry O'Terry, Tracy Morgan at a certain point. Mm-hmm. So just a lot of fresh blood was needed, and that included our topic today, Adam McKay. So we could get, unless you have anything else to add about him getting to SNL, whatever, we can get to some of his notable sketches, Deremy, if you'd like.
Well, sure. I guess the only thing I would add is Adam comes in. He's like 27 that first year. And so we are, Thomas and I are talking about the pressure that Lorne and the show was under. But after that first year as a 28-year-old, Adam talked about Steve Higgins calling him into his office and saying, Lorne wants to make you head writer. Yeah. And I think that's just amazing. Twofold, that at the age of 28, you're the head writer for SNL, but also it's only your second year at the show, which I think shows what Lorne saw in him, but also big credit to what we talked about, that UCB Second City background that he kind of was going on bring into the show. I think Lorne really kind of took a lot of faith and believed in him.
Yeah, so he started, of course, in season 21. Yeah, by season 22, he was head writer, co-head writer that first season, and then he was head writer by himself in seasons 23 and 24. So that is a lot of trust put on Adam McKay. Just from a viewer's perspective, as an SNL fan, what kind of importance do you place on the head writer? Like, how do you view the head writer's role in the grand scheme of how the show functions?
I feel the head writer has a very important role for me as a viewer, as that bridge of Lorne, but also kind of making sure the writers and cast members are on the same page. So to me, like, for people who know TV, you hear the term like showrunner. Like, Lorne's the executive producer, but I wouldn't call him the showrunner. He helps like make decisions. Mm-hmm. But I feel like that head writer is the showrunner, where a lot of the show's sensibility is coming from that head writer's like voice. And like Lauren obviously has final say in what goes on air, and he consults with his producers and the head writer. But I feel like the head writer is kind of the one really helping to bring what the show, like where we're going with the show, and also who we're highlighting on screen with the show and the type of humor that we're seeing every week.
Right. And where would you say, as a viewer, the sensibility and voice was like in those seasons 20, 21, basically in the late 90s after the disastrous season 20? Where do you think the voice was that Adam McKay helped? Like, where were we in about 98 or so, that period?
I feel like with we'll kind of get into it with the sketches too, but I feel he saw what we kind of all have been seeing on the big screen for all these years. The partnership kind of ended, but he saw the connection and the greatness in Will Ferrell. And to me, very quickly, Will Ferrell becomes that lead alpha dog for the show. And how he has a great cast around him too, all the names you mentioned, and that continues throughout his stay. But I feel the sensibility, it kind of got back to a little bit of, I would say, what I loved about that era. It was a good blend of like subversive kind of humor, but also what I loved about, especially with Will Ferrell and McKay too, writing, is they take the norm and they kind of put a twist on it. So Will Ferrell and they kind of have that normal like middle America feel to a sketch.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden there's this like twist, and you're kind of going, wait, what the hell?
Yeah.
And like, it was like a good mix of relating to everyone. This is what everyone was kind of watching or seeing, whether it's a pop culture reference or just we could be like, hey, we know that guy, or I know that lady. And then they'll put this random twist in there that you're not expecting, and it just cracks you up. And I feel like Adam McKay helped to bring in like that mix of both.
Yeah, I completely agree. Automatically, I think of like Will Ferrell yelling at his kids to get off the shed when he's just kind of barbecuing.
Johnny, did you thank Brandon and Michael's parents for giving you the Lion King video?
Oh, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome, son. I just hope you enjoy watching it as much as Brandon and Michael do. Get off the shed!
His first sketch, really.
Yeah, that was like, he auditioned with that too.
Right.
Yeah, then that was just, of course, the middle America barbecue, and then he just kind of snaps, or like the dad, I drive a Dodge Stratus, like it's just a family having dinner, and then it just derails from there. You're totally right about that.
It's just they nail it so perfectly, and I feel like you said, they had kind of gotten a little too bro culture beforehand, and it kind of went back to don't get me wrong, I love subversive humor, but I think it's really cool when people can kind of come up with comedy that everyone can relate to and everyone can connect with, and like, oh, we've seen that pop culture reference, or we've seen a commercial or a parody, like kind of like, oh, we all know it, and they put a twist on it. I think that's just beautiful.
Yeah, I think McKay and a lot of the other writers and cast members that came in around season 21 or so, and even some of the holdovers, I think a huge difference between that era and like season 20 was that you still had plenty of oddball humor, plenty of absurdist material, but I think in the late 90s after season 20, I think they did a better job of making it smarter and more focused, and actually like having a point to it. Rather,
that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, just not having somebody's just not on screen yelling, or they're not making, and there's plenty of this too, like they would make, it was just the comedy, sometimes the humor at the time, they would make like gay jokes that weren't funny, just and everything like that. So some of that can be excused as just maybe a product of the times, but a lot of the more absurdist material, especially stuff that had to do with everyday life, was done in, I think, in a more smart, kind of calculated way. And I think you can tell that Adam McKay's fingerprints were on a lot of that.
Right. And I think that's what SNL, whether you look at it from the original, first 5 years in the 70s to then even when it got back on footing in like the 80s with like Dana, Carvey and Hartman and all those, it, like you said, it has a focused look, but it's like, hey, we have the subversive stuff for later on at like 12:45, closer to 1 a.m. But hey, what we're going to hook you in at 11:30 is what's going on in the time, and what like we all can be like, oh, they're making a parody about this politician or about this show or about this certain person in pop culture, and they're putting their own spin and their own take on it that's making you laugh, but honestly making you think a little bit too.
Yeah, and I think an early example of some of the absurdist material that's kind of rooted in like an everyday situation is one of Adam McKay's favorite sketches that he cites, that he wrote, was the Wake Up and Smile sketch from season 21. That was with Will Ferrell, Nancy Walls, and David Alan Grier, who was the host of that episode. And just like, I think it's just such unhinged genius, just that sketch. For those who don't remember, it was a morning talk show that the teleprompter went out and the hosts panic and it becomes a Lord of the Flies situation. Yes. Ultimately,
the order of the hand will rule. Oh, the animals of the zoo guy, Danny Usher, will sustain us.
But what if the box still refuses to give us words?
You challenge my authority?
I smell from your scent that you are weak. I challenge you!
The weatherman is dead!
So yeah, Deremy, is that like? I think it's a pretty good example of like the absurdist nature of that time.
It's like it's absurdist, and I think he's done a great job. Kind of when we see like later on, like the films he's done, it's like absurdist, but it's in that Steve Martin school where what made Steve Martin like really cool, like especially in the 70s doing stand up, was he wore the suit. He looked like like this nice conservative guy, and then he's like flipping it. His comedy is flipping everything like upside down, and he's wild and crazy and all that stuff. And I think Adam McKay takes that to like another level where it's like this is the establishment, and it's kind of like he's making fun of these news programs, like, hey, we're taking them serious because they're on TV and they're wearing a suit or like that. But then it's really like, why are we taking them serious? And it's like, what makes them the authority? Mm-hmm. So he kind of has a little bit of like flipping, the status quo on its head and being a little like anti-authority, I would say, in what he's like trying to do and still trying to do to this day.
Yeah, like he's saying, what do they really have to say if it's not on the teleprompter?
Right.
Right. And I know I have friends who are in the news industry who just like love that sketch too, because that they can laugh at themselves. But I think McKay, that's like a decent point, or a point that you can tell that he's trying to make amidst all that chaos and absurdity, and it's just on its face, just like one of my favorite sketches from that era.
And sadly, it's showing that sketch worked great then, but it's even worse now, where it's like, because they have a camera on them or a microphone on them, we're listening, and it's like to them, and it's like, why are we listening to these people? Like, what's really in their head? And it's like a lot of times, sadly, it's empty.
Yeah, right, exactly. Deremy, did you get a chance to watch the? I sent you like maybe a list of some stuff that I was interested in. Did you watch the Hulk Hogan talk show by chance?
Yes, which is one of the ones that Adam said. He said, maybe like 8 times in the years that he was there, he saw Lauren like laugh out loud at like sketches.
Uh-huh.
And he said that was one of the ones that like he was proud that was his sketch that he wrote, and he saw Lauren laugh out loud, which was very cool to know, because I think that sketch is it's brilliant. And I think just on its head, like it's the truth of like what honestly these talk shows were and have become, which is like they're just like, they're supposed to be serious, but it's like, what's the difference between this and pro wrestling at this point?
Yeah,
they're just trying to be entertainment. And the way Will Ferrell plays that, I think is just why Will Ferrell's like he's a GOAT as far as like SNL history.
Yeah.
Because he's taking it so seriously, but then, we have the off the top, the Randy Savage off the top rope segment going on right now, and the guy's trying to like talk to him and like have a conversation about something serious, and he keeps having these like wrestling breaks that are just like this classic comedy.
Now, you were taken hostage for 2 years.
Yes, an extremist group kidnapped me and held me captive in a garage. They took away my sense of identity, and they constantly subjected me to prolonged psychological torture. And then
Very sorry to interrupt, but in keeping with the format of the show, it's time for the Hulkamania wrestling moment of the week. I'm really sorry, Steve. Sting was having none of Paul Orndorff's roughneck games at the Spectrum in Philadelphia.
Yeah, like just the way it starts too, because it's kind of that Will Ferrell, Adam McKay voice of like a misdirect, or we're going to take something, we're going to defy your expectations. So I just love the way it starts. It's maybe one of my favorite beginnings to a sketch. So it's just like this fast paced music, and it's just somebody singing.
It's the Hulk Hogan Talk Show. It's the Hulk Hogan Talk Show. He's a world champion. He's a movie star. He's a world champion. Drives a sports car.
And you're just kind of getting like riled up and getting energized, like professional wrestling vibe. And then they cut to the show, and it turns out that Hulk Hogan's off that week. So your guest host is, and it's just some like standard middle of the road name.
The Hulkster always reaches for the stars. Hulk Hogan Talk Show!
Hulk Hogan is on vacation. I'm your guest host, Phil Tobin.
It's a very buttoned up guy who's like wanting to talk about real issues. And the guy who he's talking to was a hostage or something.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was like a hostage. Yeah.
Yeah. So he was interviewing this guy who was a hostage and asking him about this like terrible thing that happened to him. But then as part of the format of the show, he had to break into like the slam of the week or whatever segment that the Hulk Hogan talk show has. So it's just, I think that's just, they like to play with those expectations. They like to play with like juxtaposition of something super serious amidst something absurd, and how those two interact with each other. I think this is a great example.
Yeah, and I think if for those who don't think about the McKay-Ferrell partnership for SNL, they just think about the movies and funnyordie.com, which are all great staples of 2000s, comedy. But I think you really, to see the roots of why those two worked so well together for so long, you go to SNL and you look at the history, and like you can see that those two had it. And like you said, and they're great at doing that. They're great at hooking you in with like, oh wow, what is this? Or like even like a heartfelt kind of moment, and like the Colonial Insurance, where it's like, oh wow, and then they just kind of like do a flip and twist, and it winds up just breaking you every time. You're just cracking up.
Yeah, they're just masters at that. What other McKay sketches kind of stood out to you from that era? And I know some listeners who are familiar with McKay know that he did shorts. So we'll get to those. Like, I think we're kind of separating his sketch work from like the shorts that he did on SNL. So what sketches?
I think my favorites are a tie. Like the Hulk Hogan show was great, but the storytellers, Neil Diamond, is just masterful, because just watching those shows and then having Will Ferrell with John Goodman and Tim Meadows, and just, Will Ferrell does the impression of like Neil Diamond. I wouldn't say, maybe you disagree, Tom. It's not dead on, but it's close enough. It's like decent, where I'm like, yeah, he kind of, when he's talking, sounds like Neil, and has that like, I don't know, that eternal optimism when he's talking. But then he starts getting real dark with it, and John Goodman's like, no, don't tell that story, Neil. Yeah. Don't tell that story.
Leave me out of this.
Yeah, leave me out of this,
I
Neil.
will leave you in.
Yeah, I will leave you in, Gary. And it's just that one is just hilarious, and it just keeps getting darker and darker.
Sweet Caroline, good times never seem so good. Thank you. It gets crazy on the road and awful lonely. That's why I love pornography. This next song is all about my love of hardcore, barely legal porno.
With all these songs that are like, even to this day, they're so like upbeat and positive, but the stories, it's just, I'm going to crack up on it. But I think that might be my favorite for the Adam McKay sketches, is the Neil Diamond storytellers.
Yeah, it's just another one that just defies expectations. Like a lot of times, maybe in previous SNL, that we would see a Neil Diamond impression, and it would be like kind of light, tamer jokes. But McKay and Ferrell, I think as a duo, weren't afraid to boost it with just absurdity and maybe a little vulgarity. I think this sketch aired at the end. I think it was maybe like a 10-1, honestly, that they threw at the end of the episode. It was a John Goodman episode, so he was in this sketch. but they just weren't afraid to just take it over that line. And I don't think they were being mean to Neil Diamond. It almost seemed in a weird way like it was still done out of some love.
No, I don't think it's a bashing for Neil Diamond at all. Like I think the joke is like it's so like different and so outrageous. That's what makes it hilarious. And they picked like the right artist, I feel, who is like, he's a known dude, but he's not like, I feel like a lot of people know him, but he's not like, I wouldn't call him iconic, but he's like a superstar. But everyone knows these like positive, upbeat anthems from him. And so it's like, that's what you're thinking, like, oh, VH1 Storyteller, that's what you're going to get from like Neil Diamond. But then they just get darker. I like how like it's just dark, and then the next story is darker, and then like the darkest for like the end. Like, it's just brilliant. Yeah,
it's one of my favorite sketches from around that time. That was in season 23. So go look up the John Goodman episode from season 23. This sketch may be a little hard to find, but it exists on the internet if you know where to look. So McKay also had a hand in one of the more famous early commercial parodies of the time, that Old Glory Insurance.
I'm Sam Waterston of the popular TV series Law & Order. As a senior citizen, you're probably aware of the threat robots pose. Robots are everywhere, and they eat old people's medicine for fuel. Well, now there's a company that offers coverage against the unfortunate event of a robot attack, Old Glory Insurance.
I think it was important for this era, actually, like this specific thing, like in terms of establishing tone and credibility for the show. Like, I know a lot of people who weren't necessarily huge SNL fans that just loved sharing this sketch with me.
Oh, it's such a great sketch, and it's broken because I feel like you can still see it a little bit now, but I mean, now we're in streaming. But I feel like in cable, all of us who grew up with cable, especially, I mean, we're in summer, and like if you were a kid home during the summer at midday, and you would get those commercial breaks for like insurance, and they always would kind of be like that. Like some elderly people sitting around, and it's like, can you believe Janet fell last week? She fell. Oh, well, I'm just glad I have my insurance that'll blah, blah, blah. And then some spokesman comes out. It's important for your loved ones to have so-and-so insurance. So I feel like maybe younger people don't see that, but I feel like our age group, Thomas, those were commercials we always saw. So for him to kind of spoof that, but then flip it on like robots, you know, it was just like, it's just brilliant.
Robots are stealing old people's medicine and using them as fuel. And
yeah,
you're right. It was a great parody of us when I would be home sick, quote unquote sick from school, and be watching the Price is Right, and those commercials would come on. And yeah, that was great. And looking at McKay's work now as a director, like seeing some of the statements that he tries to make about society and whatnot.
Right.
Looking back at this sketch, it seems like, you know, he probably had a point of view about like insurance companies and how they try to prey on elderly people and things like that. So there was a point of view there.
Yeah, you start to see it. I think you can see it a little bit in the sketch work, but I think especially being head writer, you're juggling so much. But in those sketches, he's showing like a little bit of like he's getting angry with the world. And I feel like when we get to like the short film era that he was doing, then you really see him like like the blueprint out there for what we see later on in his filmmaking career.
Yeah, you start seeing, I mean, it's interesting to just go look back and seeing the little seedlings of his voice that, you know, now in 2023, we know what Adam McKay's voice is now in terms of like his point of view and everything. But seeing these little seedlings there early on in his sketches is pretty fun. He's also he wrote the first installment of Celebrity Jeopardy.
Sean Connery, it's still your board. I'll take swords for 400. It's actually not swords, sir. Swords. These are words that begin with S. The answer is Popeye is this sort of man. Burt Reynolds.
What is Popeye?
No. Sean Connery. And remember, these are words that begin with the letter S, not swords.
Saber.
No.
It began with a bloody S.
I mean, how important were those Celebrity Jeopardy sketches to that era of SNL?
And till like current day,
yeah.
Like, you know, really, honestly, like They've gone through a generation. I think those Celebrity Jeopardy sketches were so huge in that era, in really kind of bringing back the SNL that like people were missing. I feel, and bringing back like what I hate to say it because I feel like I said, I don't like agreeing with the suits, but like that's what they were missing, you know? Those sketches that people were like on Sunday morning or Monday morning were talking about. And the Celebrity Jeopardy then and now, if you talk to someone the day after on a Sunday or on Monday, you know, you're back at work, you're referencing Celebrity Jeopardy. And I think that is just a huge, like, big ups to Adam McKay and Will Ferrell, and that, you know, from when Norm was on there and different people like who could really bring that home, and it showcased a lot of the cast talent, but also like, hey, you got a lot of them in a sketch, and then we all were talking about it like that next week, and we still do that to this day with those sketches.
In a way, they were doing viral content before we had a term for that.
Right.
Those Celebrity Jeopardy sketches did go viral in a late 90s, early 2000s kind of way, meaning that we would talk about it at school or work the next day, maybe even download them from Kazaa or Napster or whatever.
Right,
like, yeah, I would spend an hour downloading just like one Celebrity Jeopardy sketch.
And I feel like when those were on, those were what were even if it wasn't for you personally, like that week, like the funniest sketch, but the first sketch when you talked with another SNL fan, you were talking about the Celebrity Jeopardy sketches.
And it appealed to, I mean, the fact that it appealed to non-SNL fans alike was just so huge. It's kind of like the cowbell sketch. Like something like that just transcends whether you're a fan of SNL, and even gets those haters to say, oh man, well, SNL usually sucks, but this one was great.
Yeah, that's the gold. That's the gold standard to me. I'm glad you said that. To find like the iconic sketches is when the people who don't really watch, they're not the SNL fans like you and I who are watching it
since
weekly.
Belushi,
Yeah. Has been good since Eddie Murphy. Has been good since Dana Carvey. We always hear that, or Farley.
Exactly.
But they know those sketches, and they can. I like that one. That was okay, but everything else stinks, though. It's like, all right. Well,
but then they end up
something.
naming like 15 to 20 sketches that they love.
Yeah,
but it sucks anyway. Yeah,
it's a terrible show though. But, you know.
Yeah, those were super iconic. Before, I have one last point about McKay's sketches, but I didn't want, if you had anything else that the listeners should know as far as his sketch work goes, I wanted to give the floor to you.
Well, I think the big one to me that I always knew he was a part of was the Bill Bransky sketches. And I think those are like brilliant, where it's classic classic improv type of sketch where you can reference a person or something that's like not on stage, it's not there, but everyone who's on a part of the scene can get a lot of work out of it. And I think those commercials or those like sketches always were great, where I don't know, you kind of always like I said, like earlier you've said, we all know like that classic scene, that image of like that salesman, that Glenn Ross is a tough job and blah blah blah, but it's like, oh well, Bill Bransky, blah blah blah, and then it's like we're all like toasting this guy and all those things.
Bill Bransky! You know Bransky goes about 9'8", 790 pounds.
Oh, he sheds his skin once a year?
I once saw him scissor kick Angela Lansbury.
And I feel like that's just another thing of him finding like what we know, what's the image in our heads of like this hard, middle of America, like traveling salesman, and these guys, hey, it's a tough job, and they're drinking, they're getting drunker and drunker, and they're toasting this one guy. It just is a brilliant type of sketch that they do. And Farrell and John Goodman, like they always would nail it.
Yeah, absolutely. David Koechner. We'll give a little David Koechner shout out here on this podcast. Yeah, he was great. And I think that format of a sketch and that premise just really lends itself to be able to just provide like really evocative writing, to get really weird with it. Like so you're establishing a Paul Bunyan kind of character in Bill Bransky. That means the writing could get creative. You can say anything about Bill Bransky, anything absurd about Bill Bransky, and we as the viewer have to believe it. because it's Bill Brasky. We've already established who Bill Brasky is, so you can get super creative with it.
And it's classic McKay, like Ferrell, kind of there. And I'll say why to the viewers in a little bit why I keep putting them together. But it's classic where they keep getting weirder and weirder, and it keeps building up to like it's a stranger, and then at first you're kind of like, oh, that's funny, and then even like John, all of them in the sketch are like, huh, but they keep just building up to like how absurd it is, and I think if you're watching those sketches, if you're watching what McKay and Ferrell do, and I've heard this before, that a sign of how someone is like brilliant is they make it look easy to everybody. Everyone thinks they can do it. So if you watch it, you think, oh yeah, that's not that hard. Like, yes, it is, to make everyone kind of say, oh, I get it. I know that person, or I know that scenario, or I know that scene, or I've seen that. And everyone can you got them hooked where we all relate, but then you flip it. And, we know it's a comedy show. We know it's going to be flipped, but we don't know how or when or how big you're going to flip it. And to have that timing down just right takes a lot of, it's hard to do. And these guys nail it.
Yeah, they nailed it every time. It's one of those where I can imagine them sitting in the writer's room just volleying,
yes,
just what can we say about Bill Brasky? Let's come up with some ideas. And that would just be such a fun writer's room to be a part of. And I don't know, Deremy, do you remember in the mid 2000s, all the Chuck Norris, when the Chuck Norris stuff became popular and viral? Like, he was like a Paul Bunyan, like, oh, Chuck Norris, whatever. Look up Chuck Norris jokes.
Right.
As SNL fans, we had Chuck Norris jokes before that. It was Bill Brasky.
Yes, absolutely. That's a good point. Bill Brasky was those Chuck Norris stories way before it. And another kind of sketch that has lasted for generations, like they've been able to use that, especially when Will Ferrell comes back on.
Yeah.
Like, they've been able to use that Bill Brasky type of sketch.
They brought Paul Rudd back.
Yes.
To do it. They've incorporated Alec Baldwin as a Brasky guy. Like, it's one of those where if a host is down to do it and they have the chops to do it, you can just put a host in with, it was one of those that they could replicate. Will Ferrell was like at the core of it, but they could replicate it with different whether it's John Goodman, Paul Rudd, or Alec Baldwin.
And that right there is like a testament to, I know we're going to get to like the Hall of Fame, like making the case, but right there, when you have not only like, in my opinion, iconic sketches, but they don't just last in your time. They're being able to last years and years after you've gone from the show and being used like that. Like, that's an iconic legacy to have.
Yeah, absolutely. And another kind of iconic legacy that formed when you're talking late 90s and early 2000s SNL was the political sketches.
Right.
So especially the George W. Bush and Al Gore debates. And Adam McKay, along with Jim Downey, of course. Jim Downey gets a lot of credit for this. But yeah, the great Jim Downey and Adam McKay wrote a lot of these political cold opens and whatnot with George W. Bush and Al Gore.
Well, that brings us to the close of tonight's debate. Each candidate will now give a brief closing statement.
Jim, could I make 2 closing statements?
I'm afraid not. In fact, we are almost out of time, so I will instead ask each candidate to sum up in a single word the best argument for his candidacy. Governor Bush?
Strategery.
Vice President Gore?
Lockbox.
I think those helped get SNL into another golden era.
Yeah, I think the mid to late 90s, it's rising up. Like, these guys, the writers and the cast are really gelling, and they have great work. That 2000 election was just golden. I mean, it was golden in so many ways that it was just perfect for them. And to have the perfect kind of candidates in George W. Bush and Al Gore, but then to have the perfect people with Darrell Hammond being Al Gore. And I don't think there was anyone who was just made for Will Ferrell to be more than George W. Bush. Yeah. And they just nailed it. And Adam McKay said that, and some of those, I think I'm trying to remember the Palm Beach, I believe, sketch.
Yes.
That George W. Bush, his staff, he caught his staff watching and laughing at the sketch that Will Ferrell was doing, and that like George W. Bush got pissed at his staff for watching it. But I think it's just it was something that you have those two guys to nail it, and then you have a recount, so then you get even more. The election isn't over after election night, so then it's just you can milk it more and more and more. I think you're right. It led to where those are the golden days of SNL. Like, it's always talked about, but you have like Saturday Night Dead or What's Wrong with It. But when it's like everyone can't wait and everyone is hyped for 11:30 to talk about it, and it's front page on the newspapers, that's the stuff that we like crave for as SNL fans. And the 2000 election was definitely that.
Yeah, everybody was saying lockbox and strategery right after that. Like that just became part of when somebody wanted to make a joke, they might use the word strategery or something in there, and that came from these SNL sketches. And that Palm Beach one that you referenced, I'm not shocked that the real George W. Bush got pissed, because especially in that sketch, it really painted George W. Bush as like an infantile moron, even more so than the debate sketches. Like that Palm Beach one really kind of went after him, and it was Val Kilmer playing his brother Jeb. Anna Gasteyer was Catherine Harris from the state of Florida. Daryl Hammond made an appearance as Al Gore. Chris Parnell did a great Tom Brokaw. But it was just like during that recount, Deremy, and I could see maybe why George W. got annoyed by his staffers laughing at that.
I'm kind of like, man, like I would love to see like with the staffers, like, why would you have that on in his presence? But then maybe before he was like okay with it, but I'm like, that's the one, like I would not want to, like that was a bad one where it's like, like you might get fired, like if he catches you laughing at that, like. But I mean, I think it's funny, but I'm not great. George W. Bush, but it was.
Well, it was. I think it was during a point where most people, and probably McKay included, they were just getting frustrated. It was during the recount. So it was the Florida recount as like a soap opera, which it was. So, I mean, it was maybe the obvious play is to say, like, let's actually like do a soap opera sketch revolving around this stuff. But I think you can sense the frustration in the writing.
Yeah. And I think that's what's best about a political sketch, when you can look at it and you can say, like, both whatever political belief you have, you feel like they're getting the other side really good. And when I look at like this sketch, I feel like I see what you mean with the frustration. And I feel like they're frustrated with the candidates, but they're frustrated with the system and this process, and it's just nonsense. So now we're just really going for it here.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's where that the Downey, but also like the McKay, like he's angry at the system, and he's pretty much yelling to us, like, don't you see the crap that's going on in front of you? Like, this is like, you should be outraged.
Which
and that
we see in his most recent, you were going to say, it becomes a trend
movies.
with him.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's in his movies, his podcast, his TV shows, like he's really doing that now. And like, you see it here. You see it in his SNL days, clear as day.
Yeah, absolutely. So to recap, just based on his sketch work as a writer, Adam McKay. So he played a part in the formation of the Celebrity Jeopardy sketches, iconic, the iconic Bill Brasky stuff. He was a big part in the political cold opens and sketches that just almost defined a whole era, a whole golden era of SNL. Had great one-offs like Wake Up and Smile, Old Glory Insurance, Neil Diamond Storytellers, Hulk Hogan Talk Show. So his resume already, I mean, awesome. Like, just as a sketch writer, the head writer, we should say, for 3 seasons. Man, so then we get to a time that, Adam McKay, toward about season 20, heading into season 25, he felt like it was time to move on from writing on SNL to directing. So he says that he just decided to take a shot. He thought he was going to get rejected, but he decided just to ask Lorne, can I do short films for SNL? And Lorne said, yes, absolutely. To McKay's surprise, he was actually given a budget, and Lorne said, go ahead and make these short films. So like in the, harken back to the days of like a Tom Schiller, Gary Weiss, maybe even Albert Brooks doing short films on the show. So Adam McKay he says this is how he learned to direct, Deremy. So very interesting short films, I might add. 8 in total. So yeah, what did you think of some of Adam McKay's short film work here on SNL?
And he was a director, but also what he fought for, what Lauren gave it to him, was to name his title as, so he was coordinator of falconry.
Yeah, that's right. That was also part of it that Adam McKay got to name his title. So he was writer / coordinator of falconry.
Yeah, coordinator of falconry.
I love it.
Classic McKay. The H-is-O, like the heat is on, it's a great one. I love that. The Neil Armstrong, the Ohio years.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it kind of, for some of these, it shows like both, like, which I think is really hard to do, which is some of them are just really out there with some of these shorts, but then some of them have what he did in the sketches, which is like real, like relatable. Cause like the Neil Armstrong, I like that one a lot because I feel like it kind of, it's something that we all have, we've all seen, which is someone who they're lucky enough to get of a certain age. It's like, oh, like he or she used to be this, or they used to be able to do that.
So can you set that one up? Because I did highlight that one too, and I did find it relatable. But so can you set up kind of what the beats of the short?
Pretty much breaks down like Neil Armstrong went, to the moon on whatever day in 1969, and then it's like in present day he's like in Ohio, and he's just sitting on his couch, and his wife's like, Neil, I need you, and pretty much like every other like guy, like his wife saying, I need you to do this, and he's just, I went to the moon. He's saying that, and then he has to like go like to the store.
Howdy.
How's it hanging?
Fine. I landed on the moon.
Is that it?
Yeah, that'd do it. Moon.
That's like $9.
There you go.
All right.
Moon. Moon.
There's your bag.
Thank you kindly.
He's in all our monologues, just constantly reminding himself that he actually went to the moon.
But I think it's just it's great to classically, to kind of always see that, because it hits on both. It's like the relatability, like no matter what greatness, like we all have, like we have our time, and then hey, like sadly life will go on, and then we think it happens to us, but no matter how big you are, how famous you are, you're that guy who's like, I used to do this, I used to do all of this. Well, now you're this elderly guy who's just kind of like forgotten, and which is like a shame. But I think that's what hits on it, and just him saying, I went to the moon. Yeah. And I think that makes me laugh, because it's just like, I did something important, damn it. And like, no one cares. Like no one's giving me this respect. I have to go to the convenience store and, get milk like the average guy. But yeah, we all can relate to that,
Exactly. He has the classic line like,
oh man, I really did it. I landed on the freaking moon. Man, do I kick ass.
Like, he's just that self-talk. And I guess that would be something that I would have thought about almost every minute of the rest of my life if I went to the moon. Like, how could you not? Like, I think that's what McKay probably thought about. He's like, this is a guy who went to the freaking moon. How is it not on his mind every second of the rest of his life, right?
Oh, yeah. And it's like, and I'm not sure how old Neil Armstrong was when he did it, but it's almost like, man, you peaked too soon, because I probably for us, like, I can't tell you how many Neil Armstrong middle schools I saw, or like Neil Armstrong, Drive or Way or something. So it was like, he's this guy, but I can honestly say for me, I go, where is Neil Armstrong? And he's just there, but like, he wasn't like a guy I saw all the time either. Yeah. But it was like, he did this thing that everyone could reference, but you would think like, well, you're running for office, or he should have this or that. And it was just like, no, Neil Armstrong went on the moon.
In high school, I had an English teacher who actually went to Purdue with Neil Armstrong. So I heard about Neil Armstrong all the time, because she was actually friends. Like, they weren't just classmates, like they would hang out together and they were friends. Oh, so we got to hear about Neil Armstrong's Purdue days, the Purdue years, not Neil Armstrong, the Ohio years,
not the Ohio years,
portraying him. But and his wife in the sketch has a great line. She just says, "Can't you just get over it?"
Yeah,
it's almost like, yeah, it's cool that you went, but this is impacting our lives. Like, just please, like,
yeah,
get over it.
Which I think is classic McKay, because we saw that, I believe, with from some veterans from different people, different groups at that time, where it's they did this great thing, that's nice, and then it's all right, we're moving on.
Yeah.
It's you get saluted but moving, and we still see that sadly to this day. It's hey, this person did all this, oh, that's nice. Anyway, back to my phone, back to what's happening
now. Because
it's exactly,
you don't even get 15 minutes of fame. It's 6 minutes of fame.
No, and like you said, he went to the freaking moon.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, one of my other favorite Adam McKay shorts was the 5-finger discount, which is the last one that he did. It was in season 26, and that was with Molly Shannon, who was not a cast member at the time. I think she just came back to do this. She plays a woman who shoplifts dogs from pet stores.
Yeah.
And Adam McKay plays another shoplifter. But this is just classic. And Deremy, I don't know if I'm biased, but I got to say up front, one of the things that really drew me to the sketch too was Molly quoting Boogie Down Productions.
Criminal-minded, you've been blinded. If you're looking for a style like mine, you can't find it.
I don't know if you caught that.
Yes, I did. You're right.
Criminal-minded. That was a wonderful touch.
That was such a and Molly. We got to give Molly Shannon. I know you said her earlier. She was a big part of this resurgence in SNL. But Adam McKay really showing, and I know he had directed in some theaters work when he was in Chicago before SNL. So he had some a little bit of it's different than films, but he had a little bit of background in directing. But he really kind of showed a different sensibility at this time. And I kind of give credit to him looking back at it to being head writer, but I'm going to take a step back. I'm getting burned out and I'm going to really have fun and really try to explore and do something different here. And also to his props, in that second year when he was a head writer, he brought in someone I think we all know and love, Miss Tina Fey.
Yes.
He brought her in. So I think also he probably said, I got someone here with a lot of talent, a lot of ideas who can kick ass at this position. So I don't have a problem stepping away from the head writer because Tina Fey can do a great job, and she did. But I just think it's awesome in the sensibility, and that short, which is a good way to go out too, is just a classic McKay short.
Yeah, and even though the material in these shorts kind of fit the absurdist nature of a lot of what we saw in SNL in that time period, I think these did strike a different, almost visual tone. And it was maybe still a little jarring for people. So you would go into these sketches that we're used to, and then all of a sudden it's this just kind of disorienting short film that we hadn't seen probably since... Gosh, I'm trying to remember if they did a lot of short films. Tom Schiller every now and then, maybe in the late 80s did stuff, but we hadn't really seen a lot of short films since the early days. And maybe Lorne was a little... I'm surprised he gave Adam McKay the green light right away because I don't think he had a great experience with Albert Brooks.
Definitely did not.
Yeah.
Definitely did not.
But maybe it helped that McKay was already on staff, but we hadn't seen something like this on SNL in a while.
Well, let me ask you, Thomas, and maybe this is do you see a connection in Adam McKay's short films and then what The Lonely Island were to do, some years later with making that going viral? Do you see there being a connection and McKay helping to influence what The Lonely Island did?
Yeah, it was. I think it was a definite influence. I don't know if you asked The Lonely Island guys if they would put the 1-to-1 influence compare, but I think it helped usher in. It helped open the door for sure for The Lonely Island to do their thing. But these were more rough. The Lonely Island did similar things in a more glossy, well-produced, more polished sort of way. But these definitely set the foundation for, I think, Lorne trusting that something like this would have a place in SNL's format.
Which I think is a big plus for Adam's Hall of Fame candidacy, that influence. that connection.
Like a trendsetter, especially
Yeah.
for now SNL Hall of Famers, The Lonely Island. Like,
Yes.
he helped Adam McKay helped set the foundation for that. And with some of these shorts, I just, even though we might not go into detail about all of them, I want to read the synopsis, because just to give you the listeners an idea of just what these were about. So Deremy had referenced the very first one, the H is O. So that was a strange one with Ben Stiller playing someone who says he could get anybody into bed in just a few lines, and his friends challenge him to do that with Glenn Frey from the Eagles, who happened to be at the same bar that they were at, and Ben Stiller's like, okay, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna get Glenn Frey into bed with just like 3 lines. And so Will Ferrell actually came up with that, or they did. It was like a bit between them, because Will Ferrell he started pretending to be Glenn Frey after seeing Glenn Frey at a Lakers game and thinking to himself, like, man, Glenn Frey must rule Los Angeles.
Right.
And he just, the way he was carrying himself. So that started off as a bit between Adam McKay and Will Ferrell that turned into the H is O, which the heat is on, which was the very first short. And then there was one called Stephen Hagen's Pawn Shop. That was Steve Buscemi. That might have been my favorite too. Yeah, no, let's talk about that. Yeah, Steve Buscemi plays a pawn shop manager. Only the pawn shop specializes in buying and trading of food.
Yeah.
So this is your favorite one. It's up there for me for sure, Deremy.
I'm Billy. My friends call me Goat, and I run Stephen Hagen's pawn shop here in Brooklyn. This is Franklin. He helps me out with stuff.
Peace.
So we're the only pawn shop in all 5 boroughs that specializes in the buying, trading of food.
I need to know how much can I get for these sweet-ass waffles.
All right, look, beat it before I call the cops, all right?
I think what you nailed about it, where it looks different, it's not as polished as what we would see with The Lonely Island, but it still has like a cool kind of like gritty independent filmmaker look. And it's like stuff that we were kind of like, especially in that time, seeing like more independent movies in like the 90s into the 2000s. And I think the way it's shot, Steve Buscemi he just nails it, where he has that kind of like, that serious kind of like that annoyed, shop owner who is like, it's kind of like, why are you in business, bro? Like, if you hate it so much or you're so annoyed, like, why are you even doing this? Like, it seems like it's a hassle for you. But just the absurdity with like the food, and I think like Will Ferrell coming in saying, I took a dump in your store, and he's like, I don't care.
Because he was trying to sell gum, and then the sign clearly said gum is not a food.
Yeah, gum is not a food. And was that Horatio who was with him in that sketch?
Yeah, Horatio, who appeared in a lot of those.
Yeah, and then talking about like, I once threw out, this whole bucket of clams. I thought they were rocks. Steve Buscemi turns to him, well, why'd you do that, man? Like, what? Yeah. The way, like, the whole like beat of it was like so unique, where it was almost. I think that's what I love that one so much. It's almost like he just did a short that wasn't supposed to be funny. It's like a mini documentary about this store, but like the beats in there. But if you watch that, you're just like, I could see if people got confused and were like, well, where is this really a store in New York? Yeah. Like the way he shot it just had a cool feel to it. And I think that's where sometimes I give people credit in this SNL world to have the right mind or the eye to pick the right people. Steve Buscemi just nails that so well.
Yeah, it reminded me of an early Gary Weiss short, because sometimes Gary Weiss would do that. He would make shorts but talk to real people. There's one where he talked to a lady. She worked at a novelty store. She owned a novelty store, and she was explaining like what was in the store and how you could use it. But what made that funny was she was speaking earnestly about something ridiculous. But these are actors in this Adam McKay short, but the tone was pretty similar.
Mm-hmm. And if it's not like Steve Buscemi's pretty known and distinct, and we know Horatio. If you're someone who's not really a movie fan or an SNL fan, you're thinking that that's real. You know what I'm saying? Like if I just put that on for you, you're kind of like, what the hell is this? Like it was just. That's my favorite of all the Adam McKay shorts.
Yeah, that was in season 25, episode 17. So go check that out. Shout out to another one. Will Ferrell plays a guy who's sitting in his apartment, and somebody comes in and unleashes a Doberman on Will Ferrell, and there's just chaos ensues. Will Ferrell just goes nuts like only Will Ferrell can. And then the twist is that Will Ferrell paid for this to happen because it's a service that a company provides. It's door-to-door Doberman attacks, which was so offbeat and weird. And you're like, where is this going? When I was first watching this, I was like, where is this going? And I think I kind of like the payoff. It wasn't one of my favorites, but I think just the premise, just that kind of shows like just the weird, unique mind of Adam McKay and Will Ferrell.
No, and I think this kind of shows why SNL has been so important for, we're going on close to almost 50 years on TV, which is we know that, especially as the show is going on, it has to kind of hit middle America. It's, got this big thing. It has to hit the big topical, what everyone in the nation's talking about. But if you're an absurd alternative comedy fan, you still can get that too from this show. Mm-hmm. And Adam McKay kind of has shown the best of both worlds in his time at SNL of being able to hit middle America as the head writer. But for those like alternative comedy fans, these shorts really like nail it too.
Yeah, absolutely. And Adam has said that doing these shorts, said that that's how he learned how to direct. So they're obviously very influential for him. So Deremy, you were probably around middle school, high school aged when Adam McKay's movies started to get really popular. So what did like Anchorman, Talladega Nights, Step Brothers, like what did those movies kind of mean to you at that sort of formative age there?
They were between, I look at it from 2000 on, the guys you were looking at, there was two guys who were like establishing comedy for all of us. And that's Judd Apatow and that's Adam McKay, who were like behind the scenes. And I think they were just kind of going neck for neck, stride and stride of like creating these comedies that define a generation in a way. And honestly, maybe the last true for comedy movies, the last true like era of that were what Apatow and McKay did. And Adam McKay, Anchorman really just like, I think that was something that really rocked everyone when it came out. And that was a movie, like you said earlier, viral before viral. Everyone was talking about Anchorman when that came out, and the lines, 20 years later, people can still nail those lines.
I love desk.
Brick, are you just looking at things in the office and saying that you love them?
I love lamp.
Do you really love the lamp, or are you just saying it because you saw it?
I love lamp. I love lamp.
I just think when you have those movies like Anchorman and Talladega Nights, and in it, he's what people, I think, maybe realize now, he's doing what Thomas and I have been saying the whole time. Or, Anchorman, he's poking at, hey, this hairpiece is on our local television news. And, we listened to him just because he had a telestrator. And he's, really, he's threatened. He's misogynistic. And all these guys are threatened by this woman coming on to the news team and making a way for herself. And you look at like Talladega Nights with Ricky Bobby, he's really in a way coming at, the George W. Bush, that Southern culture, like rich culture in a way that he felt put George W. Bush in office again. And he's really attacking it through, bigger, better, louder, NASCAR is this and all those things. So he's kind of coming at it, but in a comedic way. And those movies and funnyordie.com really define an era for a lot of people, myself included.
Yeah, Funny or Die, again, like some of the original viral videos, that landlord sketch that Will Ferrell and Mad McKay's daughter Pearl were in. Just that landlord sketch just blew up. It had, Adam McKay said it had like 50 million views or something, like really quickly, like after a month.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I was in college and that was being passed around.
Yeah, I remember that. And so he took McKay, as far as his directing, took a little pivot after like Anchorman 2. So his last three have been The Big Short, Vice, and Don't Look Up, which are a little, maybe it's slightly more serious in tone. Still a lot of comedic elements, but it seems like Adam McKay's voice went away from pure comedy, and he leaned in more into having something to say. The Big Short's probably my favorite of those three, but what do you think of that pivot from those more slapstick comedies to like the last three, Big Short, Vice, and Don't Look Up?
I think it's huge in two ways. I think I always like, for me, the comics who are comedic minds, not just comics, who are constantly evolving their humor, their type of humor, and really showcasing what's going on in the world, but also what's going on inside themselves. And I feel like that's what Adam has taken to the next level. He's showing us what's going on in our society and how we're being hoodwinked more and more right in front of our eyes. And like, hey, are you guys not seeing this? But still doing it in a brilliantly funny way, but it's real. And also he's showing us the evolution of him and how he had always, I think, kind of had a little bit of like political and activism in him. But as the years have gone on, especially, after SNL, he's been more and more engaged in, social issues, from the environment to what's, things like that. So I think it's showing the difference in him. And I always respect, I say comedic, but any kind of artist who are doing that, I always have appreciation for.
Yeah, I like that he's taking those chances. I like that he's doing that and doing something different. And it might not totally hit the mark always for a lot of people. I know Don't Look Up was a little divisive in some circles on the left and the right, actually. Like, that's something that like a lot of people, I enjoyed it for what it was. But I like that he at least attempted something like that. The Big Short really resonated with me quite a bit. I felt, and this might be an Adam McKay trick, but I felt a little smarter after watching The Big Short and trying to explain it to my wife after I watched it.
No, I mean, hey, he won an Oscar for it, I believe, and I think he broke down something that was a huge turning point in our society, like that crash in '08. That we're still really feeling the effects of to this day, honestly. But he broke that down in a way where it's like we knew like people got screwed, but it kind of like simplified it for, that's how we got screwed, like, layman's terms. So I like that. And and I think, as you told the listeners, and being a sports history guy, when you have a partnership, people are always like, well, who gets more credit? Who's the guy that we should praise more? And we know how great Will Ferrell is, whether on SNL and after that. I think what I also give Adam McKay credit for is I think his run of what he's been able to do in all these mediums, film, TV, podcasting, has shown that it was both of them. Yeah. Hey, he did great work with Will Ferrell, but he's doing great work outside of Will Ferrell. And that, hey, they both were important to each other these past, 25 years.
Yeah, and Adam McKay is doing great work as a producer. He's been executive producer on Drunk History, Eastbound and Down, Succession, which might surprise some people, but he actually, like, it wasn't in name only. Like, he was hands-on as far as casting.
Absolutely.
Developing the tone of the show. He directed the pilot episode, the first episode. Like, he had his hands on how Succession came to be, which is a show that I absolutely love. Probably turned into one of my all-time favorite shows by the end of it. And also Winning Time. You're a big sports fan, Deremy. I don't know if you've been keeping up with Winning Time.
Yeah, season 2 just dropped. So it is very interesting, and there's a lot of Adam McKay isms if you watch season 1, but then also season 2. A lot of like comedic liberties that I think certain historical sport figures did not like. But there's creative liberties
because I think it makes it more entertaining. If Jerry West is one of the most hilarious TV characters out right now, and if he wasn't like that in real life, I don't care because it's fun to watch in the show.
And part of me is also like, hey, you're getting a resurgence here, Jerry. Like, so write it, and the people who know you're not like that. So like, relax a little bit, but
exactly. And unfortunately, Winning Time did cause a fallout between he and Will Ferrell. Which is, we talked about what a great partnership they had over the years. And the story goes that Will Ferrell thought that he had the part of Dr. Jerry Buss in Winning Time. And I guess maybe McKay had all but said that. Maybe he did say that to Will Ferrell. John C. Reilly ended up getting the part of Dr. Buss. And Will Ferrell didn't take kindly to that. And I'm sure there was other stuff brewing, but I think that was like the proverbial straw in this situation. And Will Ferrell essentially told Adam McKay, like, good luck, like, have a nice life, essentially. And I don't know, man, I think that's unfortunate. Just as a comedy fan and seeing their partnership, I think that sucks.
It's sad to me because from what I gather, yeah, like McKay has said like he always wanted John C. Reilly, but like wasn't sure he can get him, so he told Will Ferrell that. But then John C. Reilly was like, I'm open. But John C. Reilly said, well, I don't want to upset Will Ferrell. And I think business-wise, it was the right. John C. Reilly is perfect for that part.
Great.
So Adam McKay was right, but there is a way to do things properly. And the way it seemed, I think Adam McKay has acknowledged it. Like he wishes he would have done it better in letting Will Ferrell know. He kind of just did it. And that's how Will Ferrell found out. And it's a shame because, like you said, it's a partnership that has brought, for over 25 years, some of the best comedies on TV and movies that a generation will always have. And for it to end like that, where it seemed like, I'm not going to say they were best of friends, but it seemed like it wasn't just a good working relationship. It seemed like they were very tight as friends, too.
Yeah.
So it's always sad to see that happen.
Yeah, hopefully they could patch things up, just on a personal level for them.
Yeah.
I'm sure they're missing. I'm sure Will Ferrell misses his friend in some way. I mean, I've had fallings out with friends in the past, and it's, part of you still misses like their company and camaraderie.
Oh, absolutely. Same here.
All of that. So,
and sometimes it comes down to that. Like it comes down to just how we communicate, and we overthink it. But it's like, man, if you just would have. It's not what you did, but it's how you did it. If you just would have did it the right way, maybe it still would have been okay. But
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, definitely. All right, Deremy. So we've hit the moment of truth. You know how I like to end these episodes, give you my guest the last words. So, Mr. Deremy Dove, why do you think SNL Hall of Fame voters should consider casting a vote for Adam McKay?
All right. Well, thank you, Thomas. This was fun as always, man. And I look at it like this. We talked about, if you listen to this episode, the impactful sketches, the impactful role that Adam McKay was a part of. And it wasn't just him, but he was a big part in really helping to bring Saturday Night Live out of maybe its most tumultuous time in a way. That for me, to hear Lorne Michaels say that speaks volumes of that was the toughest time he had as executive producer of the show. And for him to put trust in Adam McKay and to create these iconic sketches that we still look at generations from now, they're still being used on the show. That right there to me is huge. But I also have to look at, in the show's history, you've had these great writer cast member combos that form well. I look at Alan Zweibel and Gilda Radner. I look at with Eddie Murphy, and he had, David Sheffield and Barry Blaustein, and they went on to do great work on SNL and after. I can look at Norm Macdonald and Jim Downey, but to me also Adam McKay and Will Ferrell for what they did on SNL is right up there. And I believe Adam McKay, and maybe not just him alone, but the way we talk about Will Ferrell as that great utility guy and that great guy we can fit in everywhere. Of all the writers, Adam McKay, to me, highlighted that about Will Ferrell. Will Ferrell was great with, the cheerleader sketch and, Lover, all those like outrageous kind of stuff. But the way that he was able to be the everyman kind of guy, I feel like no writer hit that better than Adam McKay. And to me, he highlighted a big skill in possibly a top 3, top 4 all-time SNL cast member. So you combo that as well. I think it's a slam dunk that Adam McKay should be in the SNL Hall of Fame. Just, based on, we have to give writers more props when it comes to the Hall of Fame. And I think Adam McKay is one of those guys where we can pinpoint and see his importance to the show in the show's history. So people, if you're listening, please vote for Adam McKay. Yeah, hey, Lonely Island got in, and Thomas and I just talked about, would there be a Lonely Island without Adam McKay? Maybe, maybe not. Lil Lauren was able to see what Adam McKay did with these and maybe put trust into, there's this YouTube thing. I'll give Lonely Island a try to kind of spread their wings. And how big was that for a lot of people? So please get out there, vote for Adam McKay.
Oh, right. That ended suddenly, didn't it? But it was different. It was different music than I normally play. So there's that. Hey, Deremy Dove. Great guy, right? Lots to say about Adam McKay. So I hope you had a paper and pencil with you and you wrote it all down, because there's a lot to catch up on. Adam McKay, does he belong in the SNL Hall of Fame? I don't know. I think ultimately he ends up there. I don't think he's the first ballot Hall of Famer by dint of the fact that he's a writer, and we seem to punish the writers. I don't know why that is. But if you're a cast member, you're almost a lock. But Adam McKay, you know, I think it's like Thomas said, maybe more famous for his work outside of SNL at this point. It's been a long time. But let's check out a sketch that solidifies him among the greats. This is one of my favorite sketches of all time, and I don't know how Thomas got the whole version of it, because whenever I find it, it's got cut-ins from Lorne Michaels and things like that. So this is great. This is Neil Diamond from VH1 Storytellers, and it's Ferrell playing Diamond, and John Goodman is the guest host. He plays a bassist in Diamond's band, and this is an exercise in let's push as far to the line as we can go and see what happens. But let's give it a listen. This is VH1 Storytellers, special guest, written by Adam McKay.
Neil Diamond. Thank you. Thank you. Hello, everyone. They told me before I came on the show that I was supposed to tell the stories behind my most popular songs and then play them. I said, cool, let's do it. But Gary over here was a little shy.
Come on, Neil, give me a break, man.
This first song... Thank you. Thank you. That, of course, Sweet Caroline. I wrote that song after a big show at the Forum. Gary and I had been drinking pretty heavily, and we were driving.
Oh, I can't believe you're going to tell this story.
Yeah, well, we were driving down this dark road, and I hit a kid. So we got out, and sure enough, he was dead. So we just took off pretty fast. And 2 hours later, I wrote Sweet Caroline. Sweet Caroline, good times never seem so good. Thank you. Thank you. It gets crazy on the road and awful lonely. That's why I love pornography. This next song is all about my love of hardcore, barely legal porno. Gary knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah, he likes that really weird porno you can't send through the mail. I'll be honest, it ain't cool. It creeps out the whole band.
Well, my bizarre, insatiable, and downright dangerous sexual habits led me to write this song. Oh, crackling rose, get on board. We're gonna ride till there ain't no more to go. We're taking it slow. Let's all do the best we can. I can turn invisible if I really try hard. I can't quite remember how that one goes. I gotta admit, I'm a little high. Kenny over here gave me some dynamite pills.
Hey, come on, man.
Hey, cool out. Just everyone cool out. Cool out! This next song you all might like. Few people know that I'm fueled creatively by my massive hatred of immigrants. Gary and I have gone on for hours about how much we hate foreigners. Right, Gary?
Leave me out of this, man.
No, I will leave you in. Well, my love of this great and beautiful nation and my hatred of all people with dark skin led me to write this. On the boats and on the planes, they're coming to America, never looking back again. just do the best you can. You hate your keyboard player because he's black. Never had the courage to tell him so. Ow!
Hey, man, you're a wreck.
Oh, come on. I think I tore some stitches. Come on, Gary, help me out.
No, that's enough, Neil, man. You got to chill out.
I'll smack you in the mouth. I'm Neil Diamond.
Okay, that's it. I'm gone. That's it.
Wait. This next song I wrote after I killed a drifter to get an erection. Forever in blue jeans. Where you going? Do the best you can. Reach for the stars like a champion. John Elway finally won. I put clown makeup on my penis. Blue jeans.
Neil, come on, it's over. Let's go, buddy.
Oh, my heart. My ass. My heart and ass hurt.
This has been VH1 Storytelling.
All right, that was Storytellers, and again, one of my favorite sketches of all time. I just think it's so surprising. It's a little mean, and I don't know that it carries over into today's era as it might have, because of the mean spirit. But it's not punching down, you know. It's not really punching down. It's surprising and shocking, and there's something, you know, wonderful about that with comedy sometimes. And Ferrell just plays the hell out of it. And I love John Goodman's voice. Come on, Gary. Come on, Neil. That's just great. He plays Gary. I should have known that because my name is Gary, even though I go by JD. It makes no sense. Well, that's what we've got for you this week here in the SNL Hall of Fame. Hope you enjoyed yourself. Next week, we will be back, and we will have another nominee for you, and it's going to be a blast. I'm sure of it. I'm sure you're going to have just a bang-up time, a wonderful time, as we prepare you to celebrate the wonder and the awe, the virtue that is Justin Timberlake. And he will be nominated by our friend John Schneider. So tune in next week to hear John Schneider talk about Justin Timberlake with Thomas Senna. Matt's Minutia Minute will be here. Deremy Dove, unfortunately, will not be here. He's not here every week. That's a shame. We could use him. I'm sure. We could think of a segment. Maybe my segment. Maybe he would be good at vamping. I don't know. But we shall see. That's what I got for you. Hope you enjoyed yourself. Be safe. And do me a favor. As you're walking out of the building today, when you walk past the Weekend Update exhibit, there's a light switch on the wall. Turn it off, because the SNL Hall of Fame is now closed.
Thanks for listening to the SNL Hall of Fame podcast. Make sure to rate, review, share, and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on social media at SNL HOF. This is Doug DeNance saying, see you next week.
To podcasts and such.
The most wonderful time of the year. Although, let's be honest, around the holidays, things really add up. But here's the good news. Only at Verizon, you can get a single line for $50 per month when you switch and bring your phone. So, while ice skating for two is definitely costing more, here at Verizon, you can save. Gifts for your third cousins? Steep. A single line with Verizon? Not so steep. A real tree? Pricey. A single line with Verizon? Less pricey. Flights to see Meemaw and Pops? Those are up. A $50 per month single line? That's down. Even a trip to the Atlanta Holiday Market will cost you more. But with Verizon, you can switch and bring your phone for just $50 per month for a single line on unlimited welcome, with autopay plus taxes and fees. All this to say, during the holiday season, when everything is costing more, you can get more for less right now at a local Verizon store. $15 monthly promo credits applied over 36 months with a new line on unlimited welcome. In times of congestion, unlimited 5G, 4G LTE may be temporarily slower than other traffic. Domestic data roaming at 2G speeds. Additional terms apply.